Well, it was the dead of night here that people in Dnipro saw the extraordinary scene on their skyline of that multi-warhead Russian missile, experimental according to US officials, and here a children's rehabilitation centre where some of the debris from the attack that night indeed landed. Children were here at the time, still broken glass on the ground below me, and really it's these vulnerable Ukrainians on the receiving end of the broader geopolitical message that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to send. The parts of the debris of that missile on display to news agencies in Kiev today, a select amount. Clearly Kiev trying to show the world exactly what technology was used against them, and there is of course going to be a lot of forensic attention as to exactly what those missile parts indeed show.
Experts are currently analyzing the evidence and working with our partners to establish all the details and the specifications of this missile and to find a response together to this latest Russian escalation.
There appears to be a consensus. This was a hypersonic missile and it was one with multiple warheads, non-nuclear indeed. Vladimir Putin suggested that it can potentially get through all Western air defences, and I'm sure that the parts on display will be pored over to see if indeed that provides any clues as to whether this is a technological leap by Russia or not. But still here, the message itself was very much more immediate and terrifying, surely.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and others in his government and military are trying to determine what kind of missile Russia launched hitting the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. The missile clearly had a multiple re-entry vehicle system, which explains the cluster bomb effect as multiple warheads in rapid succession hit the city. This type of missile with the multiple warhead system is one of the options the US has for the delivery of nuclear bombs. And since this was the first time Russia has used this kind of delivery system against Ukraine, the message from Vladimir Putin was clear. He is signaling that he and his military are ready to escalate. This follows the US and European nations giving Ukraine the go-ahead to use short-range American-made missiles to hit Russian territory. And that escalation followed Russia welcoming tens of thousands of North Korean troops and deploying the North Korean units into combat in Ukraine. Ironically, the front lines have not changed very dramatically over the past year. But with Donald Trump telling both sides that he will demand a peace deal based on the lines that exist when he takes office, Russia is ramping up its efforts to advance in Ukrainian territory, and Ukraine is responding in kind. During the presidential campaign, Donald Trump had pledged that if he won, he would be able to bring an end to the war even before taking office. But reality is now settling in.
Donald Trump's choice to be the next US National Security Advisor says the president-elect is concerned about recent developments between Russia and Ukraine. Congressman Mike Waltz told Fox News that Mr. Trump is focused on setting up negotiations to end the conflict.
The president-elect has been very concerned about the escalation and where it's all going. President Trump has been very clear about the need to end this conflict. And so what we're need to be discussing is who's at that table, whether it's an agreement, an armistice, how to get both sides to the table, and then what's the framework of a deal.
That framework, as Trump has already signaled, is widely expected to be favorable to Russia. Because even though it was Russia that started this war 3 years ago and invaded Ukrainian territory, Donald Trump's position is that whatever territory Russia has taken should be under Russian control. And all the Ukrainians living there will have to submit to Vladimir Putin's tyranny. The Ukrainian military is trying to push Russia back to the border, and President Zelensky is urging the United States and European nations to give Ukrainian forces more firepower and more leeway in weakening Russia's military at staging areas within Russia. President Biden has agreed, and especially given Russia's use of North Korean troops. So the conflict has been escalating. Most analysts believe that Vladimir Putin's talk about possibly using nuclear weapons is the same bluster that Putin has been pushing for years. However, there are fears that Donald Trump is so supportive of Russia that even if Putin did use nuclear weapons, the United States would not do anything more to help Ukraine or to respond to Russia. And keep in mind that Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons program 30 years ago when the United States, during the Clinton administration, promised to safeguard Ukraine. All of the deals, obligations, promises made, and promises not kept to Ukraine will land on Donald Trump's desk in less than 2 months. In the meantime, there is a lot of analysis and discussion about the missiles being fired back and forth, the types the US and European recently gave to Ukraine, and of course, the Russian missile response.
Just so you guys are perfectly clear on it, the intercontinental ballistic missiles have a much longer range, and so they are often used to carry nukes. And so the short-range missiles they've been firing back and forth can't carry nukes. And so, so that's why it was a bigger deal when they got the missiles, the ATACMS, that go 190 miles. In this case, these intercontinental ballistic missiles went 600 miles to hit Ukraine. But basically, the point isn't how long they went in this particular case. The point is Russia is saying, remember, we have these missiles and we can put nukes in them.
Exactly.
Okay, so that is significant saber rattling. Then there's the fact that the Russians are going to escalate, right?
Yeah, and they've been escalating.
And so now they're going to go to a different level of escalation. And when they do, then we're going to use that as an excuse for us to escalate. And then they're going to escalate. So this is a terrible idea. So I don't want to see more escalation. I understand what they're doing, guys, and I want you to understand it. They're worried that when Trump gets into office, he's going to freeze the action where it is, right? And if the Russians are pushing forward now in Donetsk, I'm terrible at pronouncing the names.
Donetsk, right?
Donetsk, sorry, I'm so bad at it. And so they're gaining more territory there, and so when Trump comes in, they're going to go red light, right? Green light, red light. And so now we get to keep all of this, right? So the Ukrainians, I understand where they're coming from. They want to push back as much as they can and hold their fronts before Trump gives away some of their land and some of their country, right? Which he most certainly is going to do. He's going to force them to do it. Having said that, escalating with 2 months left with a very dangerous and kind of radical adversary is not the best of ideas. And especially because it appears that Trump's going to cut the funding for Ukraine, and so this war is going to be over. I don't want some sort of madness to happen in the last 2 months before the war is going to end. So yes, the Ukrainian people are the victims of unbelievable injustice here. And so nobody should forget that. Nobody should forget that Russia is the one that did the invasion in the first place. But having said that, escalating now is a bad idea. I would have said no.
And as Jen pointed out, escalating now is dangerous. But let's be clear, much of this is Donald Trump's fault. Trump could have said months ago, I'm going to demand a peace deal based on the lines as they existed August the 1st, period. I will not embrace advances on either side that have been made since then. That would have taken away the incentive for Russia and Ukraine to throw everything they have at each other between November and January the 20th. Also, by Trump making it clear that the United States will cut off funding for Ukraine once Donald Trump takes office, Donald Trump has thrown away potential leverage over Russia. If Russia was worried that Trump might continue helping Ukraine or might increase the help, that might encourage Russia to come to the peace table. Instead, Russia feels no obligation to do anything except continue bombing the hell out of Ukraine and intensifying the combat operations to gain more Ukrainian territory. That is the impact Donald Trump's pledges and presidential election victory are already having on the Russia-Ukraine war. The conflict is getting worse, not better. Now, I get that a majority of Americans may not care and may be happy with Donald Trump's isolationist policies that leave countries like Ukraine fending for themselves. But when a democracy is overrun and is carved up the way Ukraine is going to get carved up, all democracies are vulnerable. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.